welcome to another edition of Speed Wobble, Ride Beyond the Basics. Today we have a very special guest with us, Troy Wilkes, better known on Instagram as @HandicapSkater. He's one of the most determined riders that I've ever met or come across. This is the reason I asked him to be here today. So, a little background on Troy. After a serious car accident that left him with a lasting mobility impairment, Troy designed and uses prosthetic skates for everyday mobility and for driving. So what makes his story even wilder, right, is that he had to fight repeatedly with the law enforcement and state agencies just to have his mobility device recognized and treated consistently. In California, his driver's license includes unclear restriction coding like RSTR:50. That doesn't actually explain what he's legally authorized to use. So, even when he's compliant, it can still turn into a problem on the side of the road. And despite all of that, Troy rides motorcycles. Okay, so today we're talking about what happened, what it took to keep his independence, what the system gets wrong, and why he's pushing for clearer, safer policies that protect disabled drivers and riders. So, welcome, Troy. How are you doing today?
Thank you, sir. I'm doing very well. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you. So, a little bit to, kind of break the ice here. So, for people meeting you the first time, who is Troy outside of this accident story?
Basically, I have an athletic mindset. From an early age, I wanted to be a professional tennis player.
Oh, wow.
So I started running 4 miles a day, doing strength training every other day, and doing yoga twice a day, and until my accident. So then in college, I shifted to AI, so I understood the mental aspects that I didn't have for tennis, and using the scientific method. And so, with that understanding, I was working at NASA, and someone tried to start a fight because I was using my skates,
Oh, wow.
and I needed to try something. So I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so I got that discipline. And so I kind of let I have a quiet, structured life where I do my own cooking and I use skating as a therapy.
Wow, it's pretty expensive. I didn't realize that it was to the extent, or that you have such a wide history, with tennis and NASA. Those are all pretty large accomplishments there, especially working for NASA. So, where did the name Handicap Skater come from, right? And what do you want people to understand when they see it?
Basically, walking causes severe pain due to my pelvic mechanics and my pelvic uh, deformity. And so skating immediately eliminates that by just the different biomechanics or physics of bodily movement. So when when you walk, you take a step and you put your foot out and it falls forward. So it's called ballistic motion. Skating, you push out to the side, so it is not that. And so basically, they liken walking to driving a car where you hit the gas, you hit the brakes, you hit the gas, you hit the brakes, because your foot can't keep momentum going through, and there's a bunch of intrapelvic torsion. So skating makes it much easier because it's a non-ballistic motion, and you can keep that um, momentum going. So basically, I came up with handicap skater because basically skates are used for my handicap, and I wanted it obvious. So that's why I have handicapskater.com to be able to portray the biomechanics of why I need to use skates for my disability.
Yeah. And Troy mentioned HandicapSkater.com. I have been all over his website. There's 3D modeling on his site. He gives a full explanation of the injury, of how your body moves mechanically. He has gone above and beyond with the development of that. It gives the full history of his legal battles and all that stuff. So we will definitely be putting the link to all of his resources in the description below, so everyone can go and check it all out for themselves and hopefully get behind Troy and his causes. So, Troy, what's one misconception that people have about a disability and independence that you wish would just go away?
Appearance. I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like I said, and I look fine, except I have that pelvic deformity, which when I walk, my heart rate starts going up, and it's called a pain-induced cardiovascular escalation. So my heart rate goes up to 180 after like 120, after um, 20 steps and just stays up there. And so it's so painful. That's why my heart rate goes up that I can't do anything about it. So I think people better understanding that would be better and allowing independence because it's punished because of ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally understand that. So let's touch a little bit more on that. So, as much as you're comfortable sharing with, of course, um, like what happened and how did that change your day to day? Obviously, we know that you have pain with about bipedal movement and things like that. But can you explain a little bit more of how the accident happened, if you're comfortable?
Sure. And I actually have a picture on my website that goes through the actual how I did the injury. So basically, I was in the back seat and my legs got caught behind the bucket seats and it literally split me in half.
Oh,
And I have multiple pelvic injuries and I cracked my sacroiliac joint. And so your sacroiliac joint basically acts as a shock absorber for your upper body. And so, that causes me all sorts of grief in terms of riding in a car, which is what makes motorcycle riding so much easier. Um, basically, I was in traction for 6 weeks, and the first 2 weeks I was delirious, and there was a long immobilization recovery period, but I was able to get through that, and ultimately I actually came back, and in college, I was actually recruited to be on the college tennis team from an intramural tennis class. So I still had the ability. It's just walking progressively got worse and worse to where it's just difficult to walk much anymore.
yeah. So Troy mentions motorcycles, and of course, this podcast is all about motorcycles and how people ride beyond basics. So, for those of you that don't know, um, Troy rides a Ninja H2 and a Hayabusa. Okay, so he's not riding an R3 or anything like that. He is riding some of the fastest production motorcycles ever made. So Troy, when was the moment when you realized after your accident that you're not giving up your freedom? Whatever it takes, I'm gonna push forward and I'm gonna figure out a way.
Um, Early on, I came out to California and I had a long commute to the South Bay. I can't sit in a car because of the sacroiliac joint I told you earlier. When you sit in a car, 66% of your body weight comes from your hips up. So 66% of my body weight comes down on my sacroiliac joint. So sitting in a car is just not tolerable. And what the hell was I supposed to do for that long commute? I didn't have a motorcycle yet, so I got some skates and I would skate down to the local train and take Caltrain down, and then once I got down to the Southern Bay, I would then skate from the train over across one of the campuses over to a job, and then skate back until they stopped letting me on the train with skates. And that's when I was like, okay, and I started riding a motorcycle with skates because that was the only alternative I had. And there's specifics, where when you're sitting on a motorcycle, you're actually sitting forward. It's similar to the yoga child's pose, which is a very therapeutic yoga pose. And so the pressure doesn't come down on the sacroiliac joint as much.
Right, right. So you're all around town on skates. You're riding a motorcycle on skates. You're in the Bay Area on the bus, the transit system and the skates. How do you explain the skates to someone who's never seen anything like them, which most of us haven't? And how do you do that in 10 seconds?
Uh, Basically, I just say, skating is a ballistic motion, or, there's impact shocks every time you take a step, and it goes throughout your whole body. Where skating, you get to use the momentum you build with each step. And
Nice.
so that just makes it easier to get around.
That makes total sense. All right, so let's talk about a little bit more on the legal fight. And you've made some astounding strides in this area. So we're gonna back up to the beginning of that. When did you realize that the biggest challenge wasn't gonna be necessarily your body, but actually the system that's in place? The DMV, law, state agencies, things like that.
Actually, it was in 2003, and there is a video of Caltrain not letting me on. I have it on my website where they would not let me on, and basically that started the fight there. And once I had that, and that was basically so I could go to this Friday night skate, which is a 12-mile skate around San Francisco that a bunch of people do on Friday nights. And I wanted to go up there and try it because I've been skating miles by myself down in the bay, and they don't let me in bars and all lots of times. And so to have a social aspect, I wanted to go up there and be able to do that. And they weren't letting me on Caltrain to do that. So I realized that I had to do something. And in 2004, I published and copyrighted my website, HandicapSkater.com, on the Handicap Skater biomechanics.
Okay. So you're out here skating around. What's the most common like point of confusion that you run into, especially with law enforcement or other agencies when you're out and about? When you have an interaction with them, what's the hardest thing to get them to understand?
They have difficulty understanding the biomechanics, which is the physics of bodily movement, and their reliance on visual assumption. They look at me, I'm very healthy, and like I said, I'm a black belt, and so they look at me strong and all that, and they think I'm gaming the system or something.
Yeah.
And it's really a lack of training on non-traditional mobility aids. And I have rulings from the Department of Transportation and the Department of Justice making it, accepting it federally from 2007. And they don't understand that. So, any lawyers out there, I have a case for you ready.
Yeah. Okay, so let's touch on that a little bit more. I want to dive deeper into that. We mentioned it. I mentioned in the beginning the RSTR colon 50. If you all look on your driver's license, right underneath your name and your address, it says RSTR. For the majority of people out there, that's going to be blank. For mine, it says corrective lenses. So for Troy, it just has the number 50, right? So for listeners who have no idea what RSTR 50 means in practice, what is it and why is it a problem being written like that on a driver's license?
Well, let me back up a little bit. Basically, why that was necessary is a cop pulled me over after 15 years of riding with skates, and I did that because they won't let me on public transportation, so I needed to be able to get to a job. That's
Yeah.
why I started riding a
Right,
motorcycle with
becoming
skate.
standard of living.
Yeah, yeah. So uh, basically, what happened is they weren't letting me on, so uh, I ended up getting on public transportation, starting a case, so that they took me in for a court case. And when I did that, I subpoenaed the heads of BART, Caltrain, and Samtrans, and they showed up. And I went through a lot of process, and I won some stuff, access to the courtroom with skates, but they still wouldn't let me on public transportation. And what ended up, I ended up having to go to the Department of Transportation and Department of Justice rulings, and the DMV. And when this officer pulled me over, he sent an incident report to the DMV safety office saying I did not have control of my motorcycle, which was a lie. And they ended up suspending my license. For 3 months, my license was suspended. I couldn't get around and had to skate everywhere around here. And what ended up happening is the DMV safety office, they had no clue how to handle my situation, no clue at all. And what they ended up doing after I was able to prove that I can ride a motorcycle safely and drive a car safely with skates, they ended up putting a restriction 50 on my license. And that basically is for a restriction, means you're restricted, like you said, for that you have to have corrective lenses or there are other things. But they put that on there to symbolize an enablement or for an accommodation for me to be able to use skates to ride a motorcycle and drive a car. So on the back of my license, it says for restriction 50, contact the DMV, and that's where it actually states that I can ride a motorcycle and drive a car with skates.
Okay, so what's the risk of DMV and the state leaving that type of restriction vague, right? Especially during a traffic stop.
Well, number one, what if I'm in another state? What if it's a different time zone and the DMV in California is not open?
Okay,
Uh,
so they're only able to find out that information of what the restriction actually says during DMV operating hours.
I believe so. I mean, I don't see how they could, if nobody's there, how they would be able to find out anything because they have to talk to someone because it is on my DMV record there that I am allowed to do that. And so, that causes a problem there. And then more of a problem is when I went to renew my license, they would not let me do it remotely. I had to go in because of that restriction. They said I had to go in. I was supposed to take a driving test. I was supposed to take a written test, and I had to come in. And that's absurd. I
Yeah.
didn't, I ended up, I talked with them and gave them grief because that's discriminatory. And I didn't have to take the tests, either of the tests, but I did have to go in and go through the process rather than being able to do it remotely and online. And with my pelvic deformity, I should be able to do it remotely and not have to go in to do that.
Yeah, so in the standard sense of a restriction, the restriction means that you must have the skates on to operate a motorcycle or a car. Is that the way that it's kind of being worded? Because a restriction kind of seems like it's stopping you from doing something, but in this aspect, you're restricted to only doing these activities with a device, right?
I had a conversation with them about that, and like I said, they didn't know what to do. The lady, actually have transcripts. If any lawyers are there, I have transcripts and actually the recordings of all the discussions with the DMV safety office. Like I said, they had no clue what to do. So this was the only way they knew of to put something on my driver's license so that I wouldn't be harassed anymore, or to hope that I wouldn't be harassed anymore about riding with skates. A cop pulls me over, I pull out my license, and they can call the DMV and find out. But I guess off hours, they wouldn't be able to find that out either.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very fair. And then you end up getting a citation or ticket or worse, just because the DMV wasn't open. So that could cause a lot of problems and a lot of unnecessary headaches. So if you could redesign this system, what should a driver's license actually say so it's clear, fast, and safe?
I would have on the front emoji or image like a little handicap sign, and on the back you would look and it would basically say uses skates to ride and drive. So that would clearly state that right there. And I have that on my website, the main pay overview page, so that people can see actual what I have planned for that, and that would just make it easier for me
Yeah.
and anybody else that uses an exoskeleton, one
Yeah.
wheel, or whatever. It would be a way that they can be able to handle non-traditional mobility aids because, like I said, the 2007 ruling, they they reclassified my skates as a non-standard mobility aid, and the Department of Justice and the Department of Transportation have not upheld that standard since then, and that's a real problem.
Yeah. So does that tie in with any type of like policy changes or anything else or types of training for law enforcement or DMV agencies that you're trying to push for?
Absolutely. So, um, cops would need to understand more about non-traditional mobility aids. They need to understand movement a little better. And, I have a amputee friend who uses skates to be able to get exercise, you know, and, just to help with the bureaucracy struggles because with a non-standard mobility aid, when I went to file a case in federal court, they wouldn't let me in the federal building because of my skates. They made me take them off and carry them up to file the systemic discrimination case.
Oh,
And
wow.
the officer walked with me because they didn't trust me. Then when I went to go see my pro bono attorney at a different federal building, they wouldn't let me in to see my lawyer. So it's totally discriminatory, and something needs to be happening about that.
Yeah. So is that the core mission there? Is it about legal recognition? You know, it's about safety. It's about personal dignity. Mm, Basically, like preventing other people from going through what you did. You're like literally paving the way for mobility, rider mobility aids, and other stuff like that. As you said, you have another amputee friend that, you know what I mean? People can have different devices. Are we looking to get an all-encompassing um, legal ruling for people with riding and driving aids that are untraditional?
Yeah, that partly yes, but more even from a for a more comprehensive scope, is it's an evolutionary change. Wheels helped humans be able to get around better. Like I said earlier, walking is very bad on your pelvis, and you can't reuse the momentum. Skates is a way to be able to get around much better. And if I'm able to ride a motorcycle, get on airplanes, although I have stories about that, go in malls with skates, pretty much drive a car with skates, and pretty much do most anything, even practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where I skate up to the edge of the mats, I take my skates off, and then I start rolling on the mats rather than walking around. Uh, it's totally capable. So it is an evolutionary or generational change that I'm trying to get instilled because the older generation is not understanding this and they've limited me for 20 years.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you. This is a fantastic fight. This is, as soon as I came across your profile, I immediately knew that I wanted to talk to you. I really want to get your message out there. I'm all about bettering people in the motorcycle community. I mean, you go far beyond the motorcycle community. I think you have a really great mission. So, what's something that you would like to let a newly disabled person know who might be afraid that they're going to lose some type of independence because you have clearly conquered that?
Don't give up. When I first started in 2003, what the hell was I supposed to do? I looked on the internet. I found out all sorts of information about the pelvis, did lots of research, and was able to get my website together. And then later, after my ordeal with the DMV, when they left me stranded because they won't let me on public transportation, then they removed my ability to drive with my motorcycle. I was like, okay, I started looking and using ChatGPT to help me with some of the biomechanics, but more so to help me with the legal aspects of it.
Yeah.
Although I've done a lot of legal stuff with ChatGPT, it really helps to be able to do the legal stuff,
Yeah.
because actually when I went to when they suspended my driver's license, I went to a lawyer and he laughed at me and said, "I don't know how you're going to be able to prove you can ride a motorcycle safely with skates." Ultimately, he believed in me. He would not help me, but he said, you know this better than any lawyer. He said, you can just do it yourself. And so using ChatGPT and the biomechanics, because ultimately the biomechanics or the physics of it, they have never been able to contradict. And because of that, they've I've been getting through with all of this, but they've never actually done a ruling to really help me so that I don't have problems with the system.
All right. Well, we'll continue on. Hopefully, we can get the message out here. So, I want to bring it back home to the motorcycling. So, I want to show a video real quick of Troy skating through a parking lot and getting on his H2. So, here we go. So, here's Troy skating through a parking lot. There's his H2. Is that a SX?
Yes, sir. SXSE.
So
That's
even
because
even with
it
them,
is.
go ahead.
But that's because it's not as squirrely. It doesn't heat up as much being too hot, and it gets better gas mileage. So that's why I went with that one.
Yeah, look at that, skates and all.
And that was totally spontaneous. I am videoed and photographed all the time. And that just happened to be someone I saw them with their camera, so I just gave them the shaka sign.
That that's incredible, Troy. This is the first video I saw of Troy, and I was reading some of the comments and stuff, and some people were saying like, yes, this is my friend. He's a disability. He rides with skates due to some mobility issues and stuff like that. And I started diving deeper into it. I discovered his website, and it was just incredible. It just blew my mind. So, as you know, I'm an instructor for the California Motorcycle Safety Program with the CHP. So I teach new people how to ride. We work with the DMV and all that stuff. So I'm gonna work on my end and see what I can push to help Troy in his mission. But mainly, I really wanted to get the message out there of what Troy's trying to do, because this is not only Troy's life, he's setting precedent for other people in any number of circumstances that need some type of aid to ride a motorcycle or drive a car or any such thing. So all of that could stem through precedent law here, and just increase the value of so many people's lives. And I think that's such a great thing that he's doing. So, Troy, when did motorcycles enter your life? Was it before the accident or after the accident?
I grew up in a neighborhood where there weren't many kids around, so I ended up getting a motorcycle, and I ended up with a YZ80 at a very young age, and it would go 80 miles an hour. And so I'd ride it in the mountains of Virginia, and it was just a ball, and I had fun doing that.
Nice. Great. So, uh, what does riding represent for you? Is it just a mode of communication that's less pain free? Or does it represent normalcy or rebellion or freedom? How do you classify it, riding to you?
Well, it's normalcy, like I said earlier, it's normalcy because they won't let me on public transportation. I can't sit in a car long, so how the hell am I supposed to get to work to make money to pay taxes?
Yeah.
So uh, it represented normalcy. It also represented freedom, so that I was able to be doing stuff, not being limited like when they revoked my license where I had to skate everywhere. So,
Independence, all of that. Yeah.
and there's also a meditative aspect since I do yoga. There's a meditative aspect, and doing the child's pose, it actually stretches me out, and so it's very good for just my well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally understand the meditative aspect of riding a motorcycle.
I'm sure you
So,
do.
what adaptations have you made to your motorcycles to be able to ride with skates? Because, left hand foot peg is your shifter, front of the right foot peg is your rear brake. So, how do you manage those controls with the skates?
Um, well, I originally had a Blackbird, a CBR 1100 XX, and I had a pneumatic shifter on that.
Okay.
And basically, a pneumatic shifter is basically hit a button and it will go up or down to shift the gear. And that was stolen. So
Oh,
once it
wow.
was stolen, I was like, well, shit. And so I ended up learning to ride with skates. And so it hasn't been too much of a problem because I've been riding with skates or not riding, but I've been on skates for so long now that they're like second nature because I have just a difficult time walking. So I'm on skates all the time in
Yeah.
airplanes and whatnot. So,
So, you haven't
uh,
made any modification to the shift lever to shift up or down? Is your bike GP shift to better shift up so you can accelerate better? Just straight standard shift?
straight standard SX, which has a speed shifter on it.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
al- Although I did have the pegs lowered a little bit so it didn't crimp my hips so much. See,
Mm.
they didn't find out till 2010 that I had hip impingement syndrome. That's one aspect of my condition. And one of the things with that is being on a motorcycle can crimp my hips and hurt. So extending the pegs down a little really helped a lot. So I did have to change the foot brake a little so that it worked with the lower pegs.
Yeah. You could always move your rear brake up to a thumb brake or a finger brake on that left hand side there. That might be able to give you more control.
That's something definitely to think about. Although, I was just riding a few minutes ago and I was riding and hitting using the back brake. I don't have too much of a problem with that. Although, well, 80 to 90% of your braking is your front brake
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, what's something that able-bodied riders take for granted that you need to plan for every ride? Is there anything, or you just hop on and go like it's no big deal?
I hop on and go like there's nothing, no big deal. The only problem is a cop pulling me over
Yeah,
and I having to go through that ordeal.
yeah. It's like an underlying fear every time you go out, huh? That some cop's gonna see you on these skates and pull you over and harass you and give you a hard time, literally for no legal reason because you have the restriction on your license that allows you to do this.
And I have
So
a handicap plate on both my H2 and my Hayabusa. So when that first cop stopped me, when he stopped me, the first thing he said is, "How do you change gears?" And I'm like,
that
"That's none of your business." I've been stopped by multiple cops and they didn't say anything like that. And I had a handicap plate. I'm like, "Hey, I have a handicap plate." And he ignored that and just wrote that incident report that really, for 3 months, I was suicidal because I didn't know what the hell to do.
so sorry about that.
Well, thank you.
When they do cite you like that and you go to court, does it get overturned?
Um,
What's the outcome of that?
Uh, well, see, he didn't cite me. He couldn't do a citation. See, what he did there was an incident report, and he sent it to the DMV. That goes to
Oh,
the DMV safety office. So the
oh,
DMV safety office, they go through and they do a whole investigation. And actually, for that, they wanted records back to 2008 on me driving. And as pedantic as I am, I actually had records back to 1999 because I knew people were going to F with me just
yeah,
because I know. And so I had to go, I went back and one of the legal pleadings on my website goes through all the stuff I had to do there. None of the images are on there, but the text of it is there of what I had to go through to get the DMV safety office to let me ride with skates.
yeah. That's like that new program they have now with if you get caught going over 100 miles an hour, they automatically take your bike, and you don't just get the citation of felony. You get referred to the safety office of the DMV, where they're going to take your license and to review the rest of your driving record. So that's nothing to mess with, for sure. So, um, Troy, so what do you want riders to understand about determination that like isn't like motivational poster talk, right? What do
Um,
you
just
just what do they need to know to just keep going? Like do
uh,
this.
Basically to stay open-minded, uh, uh, to keep at it, do your research. Nobody's going to help you better than yourself. You have the internet, which has lots of stuff. Now you have ChatGPT, so there's all sorts of stuff you can find out, and nobody understands your perspective better than you. And you using those tools, you can come up with all sorts of stuff. I mean, I know that all I did, everybody, even I had family members that told me that I'll never be able to do anything with riding the skates or all this stuff, and I was able to. And so never give up and keep at it.
Good, good for you, man. Good for you. So let's talk about a little practical takeaway here from all of this. So, what should law enforcement training actually include so the stops are safer for you and faster for everyone moving forward with this?
There are actually laws that say that if someone says they're using a mobility aid and it is feasible, they're supposed to accept that. They don't, though. And I've dealt with this in every aspect: employment, public services, public accommodation, and then even coercion, where they've coerced stuff, housing, and even transportation in terms of airlines. So they just don't understand those things, and
Yeah,
they really need to. And that's part of what I'm trying to do here is a non-standard mobility aid like exoskeleton, one-wheel scooters, and skates using wheels. Wheels work. And for them to sit there and say, "Oh no, you can't use wheels; it's not safe," that's a canard.
yeah.
And uh,
So
they
basically,
really
just
need
just
help with that.
because they don't understand it, know how it works or what the benefit of it. They think that it's wrong and it's stupid and that you shouldn't be able to do it. So,
Or
they,
I'm gaming the system.
yeah,
And
exactly. So a lot of people out there trying to do that, but then you have the earnest people that are trying to better themselves, better the lives of others, and have, that standard of living that everyone else has, and this is the way to go about it. But they treat it like you're doing something wrong just because they don't know. So I totally understand that. So what can everyday people do to support a clear disability recognition program, like without speaking over disabled people? How can they support you and what you're doing?
I have my website, HandicapSkater.com. I have a GoFundMe page because I've been financing this for 20 years and spent all sorts of money just trying to get stuff going and done all the legal work, biomechanics work, and all sorts of stuff. So help there would be very helpful, and contacting your uh, representative, because uh, it really is evolution, and the next generation knows. I watch them on the Friday night skate now. There are younger kids that are doing skating much better than the older skaters that I began skating with, and so it is an evolutionary thing, and we just need to allow that.
Right? So everyone out there, reach out to your congressman, reach out to your local representatives, your mayors, your governor, right? Let them know that things like this are happening within their constituency and that we need some change, right? We need to respect whatever mobility aid people need that they feel works best for them so that they can enjoy life to the fullest, okay? So let's close this out here. So what are you working on next, right? We know how people can support the mission. We can go to HandicapSkater.com. We can there you have great 3D modeling representation, all that other stuff. So is there anything that you have like going on right now that you want to let people know about so they can get behind that?
Like I said, I'm in federal court right now. The federal judge, like I said, they wouldn't let me in the courtroom. They wouldn't let me meet with my lawyer, and then they said that I forget what the specific term was, but it was futile, and they dismissed the case. So now it's in appeals in the Ninth Circuit. So I'm waiting to see what I did that at the beginning of January. So I'm waiting to see what happens with that. The next course, I use ChatGPT. So there are questions in there. If they don't answer appropriately, I'm heading to the Supreme Court.
Nice. Nice. So all the legal stuff that Troy is doing is also listed on his site. He's got videos of how he was treated in the Golden Transit up there and BART system and all that stuff. And then he also has some few instances of where his treatment has changed in some of those instances as well. So it's not all about let's fight the system. There is proof that some changes have been made, but it's still a long road to go. So let's get out there and let's help them. So Troy, if you could leave one sentence in every rider's helmet before they head out, what would that be?
Ride fully, ride thoughtfully. Life can change faster than you expect.
That is absolutely true, especially on a motorcycle. Okay, Troy, you are a huge inspiration. Like I've said several times now, as soon as I came across your stuff, I was like, I gotta talk to this guy. I want to help spread his mission. I think what he's doing is amazing. You all know that we're starting our youth program for motorcycle riders, getting kids involved on Ovallies. I teach the CMSP safety program, so I'm all about having a safe and productive motorcycle community. So when I can come across or find an individual like Troy that is just living it and doing it to the fullest, I really want to bring that out into the mainstream so everyone can help and get behind his mission and support what he's got going on. So Troy, it was a huge pleasure to meet you and to talk to you tonight. I greatly appreciate you taking your time to be here and spreading your message, and hopefully we can get some people behind you. Let's get your mission move forward a little bit more and garner some awareness on what you're doing. So thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to say before we close it out?
Thanks, Ryan. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. All right, everyone. Till next time. This was Speed Wobble podcast. Ride beyond basics. All right, everyone. See you next time.